Welcome back into another edition of the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show. I am Steven Serda, joined as always by my guy, Rocky Magaña, Kramer Sanson in the background, helping us keep this thing moving. I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. It seems like the Kansas City Chiefs lost to the Philadelphia Eagles was weeks ago at this point. But it was a quick turnaround week. And Rocky, to start things off today, it was about the ugliest football I think we've seen the Kansas City Chiefs play all season. But they get it together. They got their head back in the game, and they go on to just dominate things for the other 3/4 of the game. Really, once we got past that first quarter, it was like, okay, we can't play around anymore. We got to handle business against the Raiders. And they do just that in a 31-17 win where their offense looked as impressive as it's looked in weeks.
Yeah, the Chiefs came out looking like they were still a little sluggish on the turkey with the tryptophan and maybe a little bit too much of Uncle Sal's spice sangria over the weekend. But they woke up in the second quarter. Steve Spagnuolo made some nice adjustments on defense, and the offense started taking what they were giving them and attacking the seams up the middle on the short to intermediate passing. And they put together a really nice late first half, early second half, just complete game on both sides of the ball, I thought, and they were able to close it out. And so what started like, oh no, here's more of the same, ended how it should end, with the Chiefs winning by 2 scores against the lowly, pathetic, terrible, horrible, worst team ever, Las Vegas Faders, who can't seem to finish an actual victory. I don't care if they have Antonio Pierce as their new coach. They're still the worst franchise that's ever existed. And their owner looks like a little rascal's reject. And so, sorry, but this is how it's supposed to be. The Chiefs still dominate the AFC West. Sorry, Kramer. I love you.
You got really personal there, Rocky. But they do dominate the Raiders. Once we got out of the first quarter was about the worst first quarter of football I've seen the Chiefs play collectively all season long. The Raiders put together back-to-back scoring drives to open things up. The first one is a super long drive, methodical drive where they go 3 for 3 on third down and find the end zone. And then the Chiefs offense comes out, totally lays an egg, goes 3 and out, punt back to the Raiders. Then Josh Jacobs rips off a long touchdown run, and the Chiefs are just getting totally gashed by the Raiders to start this thing. And the offense can't get anything going, but then they finally settled into things in the second quarter and they put it together. And so, it's still the Raiders, but you got the win and you got it convincingly. And after that rough start for the Kansas City Chiefs, kind of once they flipped the switch and started going again, Rocky, it felt a little bit like the Chiefs of old. Like you were like, okay, we got this in the bag. It's the first time in a while that I felt that way. And I don't think, I think the defense after that first quarter turned things around too, but still certainly not the most impressive performance we've seen from the Kansas City Chiefs defense this season. But there's a case to be made that they desperately needed this bounce back offensive game more than they needed like a dominant game from the defense. Like I think this game was much more important moving forward for the Chiefs and their offensive game plans and how they deploy these guys and how they utilize things. And it probably helped that they were actually shorthanded on Sunday, not having McCole Hardman, not having Kadarius Toney available. I think that forced Rashee Rice into a bigger role. And we saw what he did today. He was absolutely incredible. So big offensive win for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's the first time we could say that in a while.
First time, yeah, it seems like in weeks. And yeah, we saw Rashee Rice do more than just a couple bubble screens today. We saw him actually get upfield and get the ball in his hands and see what happens when you actually allow him to run an actual route. I think the person who needed this game more than anybody was Travis Kelce, just for him to he'd had back-to-back games where he just was basically a non-factor, and just for him to get back, on pace. And shocking, the day that they decide to start feeding Rashee Rice to take some pressure off of Travis Kelce, it's the day that Travis Kelce starts to find some room up the middle and is able to get open and do some damage. It was just all along, there just needed to be somebody else who could step up and be that other guy. So they just couldn't. Otherwise, teams are just keying in on Travis Kelce every single play. And you take him out of the play, and the Chiefs can't do anything. They get Rashee Rice to step up and have a big day, and then suddenly they got to start respecting Rice, and you can't double team Rice and Kelce both on every single play.
Yeah, and I think that, Rice ends the day with 10 targets. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. I have to imagine that's the most targets he's gotten in a game so far this season. Finishes with 8 catches. He is their leading receiver at 170 yards and a touchdown. Travis Kelce, 6 receptions, 91 yards, and that's his biggest game here in a minute as well. So I think you're totally right. Like, Kelce needed this game especially after last week and the issues that he had and the fumble and how hard he was kind of talking about his own performance this past week. Like, the Chiefs really, really needed this one, and I'm not going to totally just write it off like, well, it was the Raiders defense. The Raiders defense has been playing better. I know Max Crosby was banged up in this one, but their secondary hasn't been awful this season. Like, the Raiders secondary has been okay. Like, this wasn't, I don't think the Chiefs are ready to go out and go head to head with the Eagles again or anything like that, or that like they could actually put up points in a second half against the Eagles, but they actually put up second half points today. And all we want to see at this point is improvement on a week to week basis. And I'm hoping that I really am hoping that Rashee Rice, this wasn't a product of them not having McCole Hardman and Kadarius Toney, that this is just his role moving forward, because this should be his role, because we've been talking about it all season long. And I get it. He's a super raw wide receiver prospect. You don't trust his route running ability right now. You don't trust that he's going to be able to see the field and find the right times to do the right things and just all of those veteran things that you asked of like a Juju Smith-Schuster last season. But it is without any doubt at this point in the season, Rocky, that he is the most talented wide receiver in that room, and he belongs on the field. He belongs getting opportunities and getting targets for the rest of the season moving forward here for the Chiefs offensively.
Oh, without a doubt. And while you were talking, I looked up Rice's targets, and yeah, its next closest target number was 7 against the Chicago Bears. This is by far the most that he's been involved in the game plan, and it's the first time I think he's gone over 100 yards receiving on the season. The usage of Noah Gray also, and even Sky Moore in the game plan selectively, just that I felt like the Chiefs were really smart in their game plan and how they utilize their receivers today. They weren't asking guys to go out and do things. They were playing to guys' strengths. They weren't asking them to do things that they're not comfortable doing. They weren't asking Sky Moore to beat a one-on-one deep down the field and make a contested catch, right? They're asking him to get a quick hitter off the line. They're asking Rashee Rice to catch the ball across the middle while he's moving and catch the ball with momentum. They were asking Noah Gray to attack the seams and catch the ball. I mean, hats off to Andy Reid and Matt Nagy. They came out with a really good game plan today, I thought.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think, that slow start in the first quarter, and I think part of it is like, the Raiders on their first couple of drives, they weren't even attempting to, like, we're not creating explosive plays. We're trying to get to 3rd and short. Like, we're trying to get to 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, like pick up easy first downs and go on these really long drives. And they were able to do that on the first drive. And so the Chiefs kind of, you get off to a slow start offensively. But then I think in the second quarter, I think we saw what wasn't working in the first quarter kind of start working. And some of it starts with Patrick Mahomes just delivering an absolutely absurd laser to Travis Kelce, which was like the Chiefs' first big offensive play of the game and really got things going for them. But like he hits Kelce for that, and you're like, okay, that's what we've been looking for. We've been looking for those kind of perfectly unstoppable Patrick Mahomes plays, and he hits Kelce for that one. And then they just started rolling. And I totally agree with you. I think the game plan today was really, really smart. It was, we saw a lot of first down runs from Isaiah Pacheco, but we saw those first down runs going for positive yardage and setting the Chiefs up in good position on 2nd and 3rd down. And some of that's what we've been asking for, Rocky. Like, let's lean into the run here a little bit, make things easier on 2nd and 3rd down instead of just coming out firing that thing when you can't rely on your pass catchers. And then you have a 3rd and long. And I think that's what the Chiefs defense did, the Raiders offense in the second half. But I think they made things easier on Patrick Mahomes today by leaning into the run, by letting Isaiah Pacheco catch passes out of the backfield. I thought that was a huge part of the game plan. And then, Rashee Rice out there actually running real routes and getting opportunities downfield instead of just catching bubble screens. And you're hoping he can turn it into a 20-yard gain. And then that freed everything up for Travis Kelce. Like, this was the kind of offensive performance we desperately needed to see from this team. And it feels like it's coming at a really important time of the season where they're coming off of a brutal Super Bowl rematch loss to the Eagles.
Well, yeah, and no matter what Andy Reid or Matt Nagy says publicly about their faith in Justin Watson and MVS, if they really believed in MVS and his ability and that he was a guy who they could trust, they would have come out and game planned a redemption opportunity for him. You would have seen a dialed up shot to him. You would have seen you, and maybe that's what that trick play was, like the one that ended up going to Kelsey. Maybe Kelsey was the second read, and you saw MVS going on the post on that play, and they just took it. They took it off the top. But it didn't seem to me like they were making a point to try to give MVS a redemption story and a chance to make good on the drop from last week. And then it looked like it was going to be a lot more of the same from last week, where they were just feeding the ball to Justin Watson, and then Justin Watson goes out and gets a boneheaded 15-yard penalty after a really good touchdown, right? You know, who knows what Justin Watson said, what he possibly could have said. He seems like a pretty nice fella for the most part. So I can't imagine him, saying anything too crazy. But then again, he is an Ivy League guy. You never know what's going to come out of those guys' mouths. So, but like, I don't know. But like, it seemed like after he got that penalty, though, they shut him down almost, and they were like, okay, well, we're done. We're done with Justin Watson for the day. Like we're not going to let Justin Watson and MVS be the story of this game again. We're going to go to Rashee Rice and Travis Kelsey, and we're going to run the ball with Isaiah Pacheco, and then we're going to sprinkle in these other guys here and there. We're going to play smart, and we're not going to let these guys who we've been feeding the ball to all season be the reason why we lose again, because they're not getting it done.
And it's exactly that, Rocky. Like, it's what we've all been asking for and clamoring for. Like, why are MVS and Justin Watson getting all these opportunities when you have young guys that you want to make plays, that you want to improve? And like, the best way to improve them is to just throw them out there. And I understand they're still learning and there's going to be mistakes in all of that. But the best thing for them to do is get live action reps and get live action opportunities that MVS and Justin Watson have kind of been taken away. Like, Justin Watson is perfect in his role on the team. Like, yeah, great. Had a nice touchdown today. Every now and then he can get you on over the top and create a deep play downfield. I don't want to see MVS on the field hardly at all, because he has done nothing but prove that he is not a reliable wide receiver this season and has taken no kind of step in the Chiefs offense in year number 2. So it was nice to see them lean into that. I will say again, like, I'm just afraid that it's a product of Hardman and Tony being out. Now, Hardman went to IR, so he's going to be out at least 4 games. Tony was a full participant in practice all week with an ankle injury, even though he was on the injury report. And then just all of a sudden on Sunday, he's also got a hip injury. He's ruled out now. So we don't know what's going on with Kadarius Toney. We'll probably hear more about that later on next week. But offensively, this is everything we've been asking for. And I hope this was what they needed to see to believe, like, okay, we got to get them some more reps. Because even Sky Moore had a couple of positive plays today. And I think another thing that I was worried about coming into this game, as they were talking about before the game kicked off with Jerick McKinnon being ruled out of this game, was that Clyde Edwards-Helaire was going to be in the mix and be in that Jerick McKinnon role a lot more. And Clyde has shown some pop over the last couple of weeks when he's gotten opportunities, but don't take those opportunities away from Isaiah Pacheco. They utilized him in the passing game today, and he had a couple of nice explosive plays out of the backfield as a pass catcher on top of his explosive runs. Like, give those opportunities to Isaiah Pacheco, because he's clearly one of the better weapons you have on offense, and start building this thing around him instead of it just being all Mahomes trying to get downfield and stretch things out. Like, this was the growth that we needed to see from the offense. And I'm really excited, but also tentative that maybe it's a mirage moving forward. And this is just what we're hoping to see. And today was kind of more of a product that they didn't really have a choice because of the personnel that they were able to put out there.
Well, also, there's a bit of fool's gold to it. Like when a good team is supposed to beat a bad team by 2 scores, right? Like make no excuses. The Raiders have had a little bit of a resurgence with Antonio Pierce, and it's a feel-good story. He's born and raised a Raiders fan, yada, yada, yada. I don't care. They're a bad enough team that their coach was fired in season. Like, they're not a good team. Aiden O'Connell is not a really good quarterback. Like, he can make a quick read and make a quick throw. But, I mean, what's he, the 25th being generous, 25th best starting quarterback in the NFL right now. And so the Raiders are not a good team. The Chiefs are supposed to come out and win this game in a convincing fashion. Now, that doesn't take anything away from the fact that they actually did it. They came out and they took care of business today. Does that mean that they're going to come out and take care of business every other game from here on out? And they're not going to have any more slip-ups like they had against the Broncos? It doesn't mean that at all. But what it does mean is that we've seen what this team can look like when they do put it all together. Like that's one thing we've been looking for this whole time. Is like we're saying, like, I don't even see it. Like last week, like I didn't even, like with MVS and Justin Watson getting double-digit targets, I couldn't even see what it was supposed to look like what the vision was.
Yeah.
We at least now can see the vision and see, okay, this is a path moving forward that this offense can lean into.
Yeah, I hope today was the blueprint. And I hope when the coaches go back and look at the film from this thing and, acknowledging that it's the Raiders, and yes, you should absolutely beat the Raiders. Like, the Raiders aren't in your league. They're not, they can't hang with you at the end of the day. But this feels like the blueprint. This feels like what they need to lean into offensively, because the offense that they put together today after being down 14-0, that offense is good enough to get you to a Super Bowl if your defense brings that elite A-game status that they have brought all season long. And I want to get into the defense now because we haven't talked about them very much. And you kind of talked about some of the things they were struggling with early in this game. I think the credit to the Raiders. I think they had a really good game plan against the Chiefs defense early on in this game, and the Chiefs got burned by it because we know Spags is going to blitz, and we know, like, you would think most defensive coordinators like Aiden O'Connell, we don't need to worry about Aiden O'Connell. Like, we'll get after him. Do we really need to blitz him? Like, let's just drop into coverage, trust the guys up front to get pressure on this Raiders offensive line and get after him that way, because he's not going to beat us downfield. Spags is not that dude, Rocky. Like, Spags is going to go after whoever is back there. He doesn't care who the quarterback is. And I thought the Raiders' game plan to beat that early in the game was actually really smart. Everything was quick, with quick passes, screen passes, slants. Like, just get the ball out of his hands as fast as possible. Don't give the blitz time to get there. Or they were running the ball, and they were kind of burning the Chiefs when they did blitz, when they were having those delayed handoffs. Like, it was a really good offensive game plan by the Raiders early on. So I don't think the Chiefs brought their A game defensively in this one, but we've seen what the Chiefs defense can be. We've seen that this is a Super Bowl caliber defense if the offense can get things figured out. So even in like a C kind of performance from the Chiefs defense, like, I'm not worried about them at all. They have proven who they are this season. We just needed to see this growth from the offense. And I think this game is a place to kind of leap off of moving forward and build on things, because I think that they really put on paper today what can work for them the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I think the defense is really a tale of two halves, or even a tale of a quarter and a half for the defense. They played a D level game in the first half, and then they were a B plus in the second half, and they came out with a C average, right? It was sort of like that. And what happens is when you blitz as much as Spags does, everybody has to do their job on the line of scrimmage because there is no second level. Your second level is one safety named Mike Edwards who got pushed on the ground, right? If your safeties are called safeties because they're your safety net. Like, they're your last line of defense there to stop whatever's coming at you. And in the first half, the safeties did not play well. Justin Reed, when he was blitzing, didn't tackle well. Brian Cook took some bad lines to the ball, missed several tackles. Ike Edwards missed that one really horrible tackle attempt, ? Against Josh Jacobs. And so if your safeties are playing poorly in a defense like Spagnuolo, like Steve Spagnuolo's defense, you're going to give up huge chunk plays because there is nobody else on the back end, right? Because everybody's up front, everybody's blitzing, everybody's pressing at the line of scrimmage. That's why Steve Spagnuolo doesn't care if L'Jarius Sneed gets one or two hands to the face or gets a pass interference penalty, because he knows there's nobody behind Sneed. Like, it's up to Sneed to lock down that number one wide receiver or get a penalty. Those are his two primary responsibilities. You either lock him down and defend the play, or you get a penalty to prevent a huge play. Like, those are really your two priorities. And L'Jarius Sneed did that today for the most part and shut down another number one wide receiver. I mean, 5 receptions for 73 yards. It's not like the level that he's been doing, say, against A.J. Brown. But, I mean, holding Devontae Adams to 73 yards on 5 receptions and 7 targets is not a bad day for a cornerback, right? And so you look at it and you say, okay, this Chiefs defense didn't play very well today. Only reason why we're saying that is because they were playing against a bad offense. Like, giving up 17 points in the National Football League, there's not a head coach in the world that if you say, okay, my defense is going to go out there and they're going to hold them to 17 points, that head coach, every head coach in the NFL, except for maybe 1 or 2 head coaches who don't believe in their offense, are going to say, yep, we're going to win that game. We're going to win that game. You hold them to 17 points, we're going to win that game.
And, you know, defense is high variance. So, like, sometimes you just get one of these games where it just didn't quite fall your way, or you just got beat on one thing. Like that Aiden O'Connell throw to Jacoby Myers with Trent McDuffie on him. Like, that was just a perfect ball from Aiden O'Connell. And it was an incredible catch from Jacoby Myers. Like, Trent McDuffie was there. He was in perfect position. Like, there's just nothing you can do about that. Sometimes that's just the way that it goes as a defense. And I think there was a couple of things like that today for the Kansas City Chiefs, but overall, it just, you know, based on what we've seen from them this season, today isn't a performance that any of us are going to remember in a couple of months. Like, it's just going to be like, oh yeah, we beat the Raiders 31-17, Thanksgiving week. Like that's all that's going to matter here in a few weeks about this defensive performance. So I'm not worried about them at all moving forward. I think the Raiders just gave it everything that they had today. And I think that was really what stood out to me. You know, I just think overall, I'm interested to hear from them post game. And I want to remind you guys, if you're listening to us on the podcast page, make sure you stick around. We'll have all the post game press conferences available for you. If you're in the comments section, keep leaving them. We'll get to a few of them before we get out of here and wrap this thing up. But I think overall, you know, you can't ever take these division games for granted. We've seen this Raiders team beat the Chiefs before and upset the Chiefs before because they didn't take it seriously. We saw the Denver Broncos beat the Chiefs a few weeks ago because I don't think the Chiefs took that game very seriously. And I think this was a really important win. And I'm hoping this really is the thing that kind of vaults the offense forward and kind of gives them a blueprint of things moving forward, because it's got to be a lot more Rashee Rice. It's got to be a lot more Travis Kelce. And I think it needs to be a lot more Isaiah Pacheco. And then that'll free things up the way we saw today, where Mahomes was finally connecting on some of these incredible Mahomes magic kind of plays that I feel like have been so void this season. Like, he finally connected on some of those things today. And the blocking wasn't even perfect. I forgot to mention, like, Donovan Smith got injured at one point in this game, and Wanya Morris was in there. Wanya Morris put together some really good reps. Like, there was a lot of things that I feel like we learned about the Kansas City Chiefs, especially offensively in this contest.
Oh man, Wanya Morris. Like, Chiefs fans have been wringing their hands over a left tackle for what, 3 years now? I mean, it's one series and it's against the Las Vegas Raiders. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt. But Wanya Morris looked good out there. Looked better than he did in preseason. Looked better than he did on his college tape. You know, he hung in there on that drive and put a few good snaps on tape. I'm optimistic about Wanya Morris after seeing him in a series today. I was a little sad to see Donovan Smith come back in the game. I almost just, with the Chiefs the Chiefs had the game in hand for the most part there. I kind of just wanted to see what can Wanya Morris do in the second half. Like why bring Donovan Smith back in the game? Just give the veteran the rest of the day off and let Wanya Morris come out there and get some reps. Obviously they brought back Donovan Smith, so it is what it is. Jawan Taylor continued to be a little bit of an issue and a liability as far as penalties go. So that's still an issue moving forward. So it's not a perfect day by any means for the Chiefs, but I mean, there's some give and take on both sides of it. I think honestly, the most important thing moving forward for me is that the Chiefs beating the Raiders today kept them out of getting into the playoff hunt. Like, we don't want the Raiders getting into the playoff hunt. We needed to be able to stay. We needed to stay fighting for the 1 seed. But the Raiders, if they would have won today, being one game out of the wild card,
no, but have you seen the records of the teams in the AFC North? The Raiders aren't making the playoffs.
It's horrible.
But
it's horrible. I don't want to see them on the graphic, Steven. I don't want to see them on the graphic.
Okay,
keep them off the screen.
Again, you're being very personal about your feelings towards the Raiders.
Yeah, I'm a Chiefs fan. I'm a Chiefs fan first. But they're the Las Vegas Raiders.
I think another thing that deserves to be highlighted about this performance from the Chiefs offensively, Rocky, this is the first time the Chiefs have had an entire football game since week 5 where they did not turn the football over once. That's something that we've talked about this offense. Like, obviously, turnovers cost you that game against the Eagles, and they've cost you other games and put you in bad positions. Like, you can't turn the football over regularly. And it felt like today they just made everything easier. They didn't ask Patrick Mahomes to, go out and be our savior on every offensive drive because nobody can catch passes and nobody can get open or they don't know where they're supposed to be on the field. Like, it felt like everything was simplified today. Everything was working better. And they didn't turn the football over. They've had turnovers in every game since that matchup against the Minnesota Vikings, which is absolutely insane. That we are this deep in the NFL season and the Chiefs were just ripping turnovers every single week. Like, this offense still works pretty well. It can still be pretty efficient if it's not the most explosive thing in the league these days. Like, as long as they're efficient and they don't turn the football over, you put yourself in positive game scripts. And that's what they did today, even though they started this thing down 14-0. That's why they were able to come back and hang on to a lead.
It's crazy. You don't turn the ball over in the red zone and you have a chance to win the game. Like, it's crazy how that works out for you. Yeah. And just, I think another big thing was, since they didn't turn the ball over, they also weren't putting their defense in bad situations, right? Like they weren't putting the defense on the wrong side of the 50-yard line and making them defend a short field. They were making, for the most part, they were making the Raiders go the length of the field every single drive and actually go out there and put drives together if they wanted to score a touchdown. They weren't going to get these like little, okay, we turned the ball over at the 30-yard line. You had 3 plays and then you're in the end zone. Like, if you want to score, you're going to have to put a drive together. Let's look at it right here. The Raiders scoring drive, 9 plays, 75 yards. And that was a touchdown. 14 plays, missed field goal. And then they did have the 2-play touchdown, but that was because of the massive play by Josh Jacobs, right? That was a long field. Like the Chiefs were not not going to, besides that one big play by Josh Jacobs, they weren't going to give up any easy points today.
Yeah, and that was, I think, all the difference too, because especially with the way the Raiders started this thing and being down 14-0, like, I feel like in weeks past, we would have seen the Chiefs come out there and feel rushed and feel like they had to force some things to try to get back into the game. And then, like, if they have a turnover on that second quarter drive where it felt like they were finally starting to get going, like we've seen them do so many times this season where they just shoot themselves in the foot. Like, who knows how this game would have turned out? Like, no turnovers for the first time since week 5 is absolutely massive for the Chiefs offense. But again, they take down the Las Vegas Raiders 31-17. Huge week 12 win, huge division win for the Kansas City Chiefs as they get back in the win column after a tough Monday night loss to the Philadelphia Eagles. But let's get to the comments before we get out of here, Kramer. Beat the Raiders down, baby. I love to see Rice get more love out there. We did it with the cornerbacks last year, and they'll help us win a Super Bowl. Yeah, I think we've all been just screaming it into a black hole for weeks now, Rocky, but it seemed pretty simple. It seemed like, man, Rashee Rice might be the most talented guy on your offense outside of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. So maybe he should play like 80 to 90% of the snaps moving forward. I'd be perfectly fine with that the rest of the NFL regular season.
Yeah, I mean, when you're a team like the Chiefs, one of the most important things that you need to do in the regular season is to identify who your young, talented players are and then get them reps, as many reps as you can in the regular season, right? Like, the Chiefs are going to be able to overcome a lot of mistakes and penalties and stuff like that and still win some football games. So they don't have to be perfect. And so with that margin of error, like, get your young guys some reps. That way, when it comes to playoff time, they're already seasoned veterans. That's what the Chiefs did with the secondary. I mentioned like that with the cornerbacks last year. If you remember the first half of the season last year, there was some really rough reps by the secondary of the Chiefs. You know, with these young cornerbacks and
Devontae
safeties, like,
Adams smoked them in their first matchup last year.
yeah, it was not pretty for a lot of games. I mean, even in the preseason stuff, like, I mean, I remember Joshua Williams, me being frustrated that he could not stop a contested catch because of his body positioning early on last year. And yeah, so get the young talented players as many reps as possible in the regular season. That way, when it comes like playoff time, they're the guys who you're going to be counting on to make the plays to win the game, like we saw with Jalen Watson last year.
Yeah, it's huge. If the Chiefs stop beating themselves, they'll be unstoppable. Well, they didn't do it today. They almost did it with the way the defense opened things up, and the offense, I think, deserves just as much blame for that first quarter because they didn't do anything. Just a couple of 3-and-outs where they looked like they had no idea what was going on. I don't know if it was just like a sluggish start from Thanksgiving. Everybody's probably been crushing food and eating unhealthy all week. But once they turned it on and got it going, I think this was one of the more impressive performances from them all season, including not turning the football over, which is just massive.
When you're the heavyweight champion of the world, the only one who can beat you is yourself, right? Like you're only fighting against yourself, right? You're the champ, you're the heavyweight. There's nobody who can beat you but you. And I mean, it's the truth. And if the Chiefs will just take care of business and play the way that they know how to play and put drives together like they did today, all they have to do is just go out there and execute. Like, they don't got to come out and knock somebody's head off. They don't got to come out and run faster, hit harder, throw further. They just got to come out and just execute the game plan, and they're more talented than the other team and good enough to win.
Can we now insert number 4 as our wide receiver 1? How about keeping him on the field rather than rotating him out as often? Yeah, I think it actually worked to the Chiefs' favor because, like I already mentioned earlier, Rocky, like, I'm not totally convinced that this is something we should be like, okay, this is his role now. Like, he won the job and this is what it's going to be moving forward. I think McCole Hardman going to IR, Kadarius Toney just last minute being a scratch from this game after popping up with a hip injury on top of an ankle injury that he was managing this week. Like, I think all of that played in. I know they called up Montrell Washington. They activate Richie James, but like, we saw them say, well, at least with these guys out, this is how Rashee Rice carves out a role for himself. Now, I like to think that he did enough with that today. That means, yes, this should be his role moving forward. Maybe you got to show some patience with him. Maybe he's still a really raw prospect, as we know he is. And so maybe he doesn't have the whole route tree just yet. But all he does is continue to prove that he's got the most potential than anybody else on this offense, like anybody else in that wide receiver room. So it's without a doubt moving forward, this needs to be his role and this needs to be what he is doing for this team.
Yeah, Andy Reid's always going to roll out packages of wide receivers for different concepts and different plays that he has drawn up where he thinks that this guy's good for this role and this one specific route for this reason. I go back and forth on it because at some point I think there's a little bit of you're tricking yourself and there's a little bit of overkill to it. I think there is some wisdom to kind of like the Bengals style of offense where you say, okay, we got Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, and T. Higgins. Those 3 wide receivers are going to be out there every single time. They're going to run the entire route tree. And any play that we run, it's going to go to one of those 3 guys as a wide receiver. Whether or not the Chiefs would go to more to something like that remains to be seen. I think that for them to feel comfortable doing that, though, they need at least one more reliable wide receiver. They can at least say, okay, we're going to keep these 2 guys out here. Otherwise, they're going to keep rotating packages because it doesn't make sense to leave one guy out there and then not rotate out any other packages. And he's still young and they still don't have full confidence in him yet. I mean, that's the other truth, is that Andy Reid's not going to leave him out there for, the majority of the snaps because he doesn't want to expose the kid.
Well, and I mean, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce are the only offensive players for the Chiefs outside of linemen that are typically like 85 to 90% of the snaps or something like that. And I'm not even, I would like to see that from Rice, actually, but I'm not even asking for that. I'm just like, can he be 75% of the snaps on a weekly basis moving forward instead of, hovering around 50% of the snaps or like 60% of the snaps? Like, can we make sure that he is on the field enough to get like 8 targets every week moving forward instead of Justin Watson getting double-digit targets? Can we make sure Rashee gets 8 opportunities a week moving forward to make something happen? Like, that's all I want to see, because I think he's proven that he can be a difference maker in a way that nobody else in that room has shown this season. So just absolutely massive performance by Rashee Rice. Huge bounce back win for the Kansas City Chiefs. As always, please make sure you follow Rocky Magaña on Twitter at Rocky Magaña. I'm Steven Serda, where you can find me. You can follow Kramer at Kramer Talks. Also, make sure you please leave a rating and review for everything that we're doing right here on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. Stay locked into arrowheadpride.com for everything you need to know this week as we look ahead to the Chiefs' next matchup. And if you're listening to us on the podcast page, we'll have all the post-game press conferences immediately following the commercial break. So make sure you stick around for that. We will talk to you guys soon.